Welcome back to another Game Time Discussions. I'm Emery Cuzzy. I'm sitting here with Dustin Zimmerman, and we're going to go over the recap for Week 9 of college football, and then also looking forward to this Week 10. Some really big matchups coming up in Week 10, but not a ton of really good games. Just one that is going to be awesome.
Feels like a lull. We don't have the whole 7 or 8 big matchups going on again. But, I mean, this late in the year, every game matters. We're at the point where we have big losses and big wins.
Yeah.
At least for our top 16 to 20 teams.
Yeah, we'll talk about, let me pull up the last week's rankings and stuff. As you can see on the board, you can see last week's rankings. And, I mean, a lot has changed in the way that like certain teams have lost and fallen big amounts, so other teams have just jumped up one spot or something like that. But actually not too much has happened between this last week and this week versus like non-teams losing that were good, right? Like there were teams that are suspect that lost, but not teams that were good that I was expecting. So it kind of was a pretty simple week top to bottom, but there was a lot of fun. There was a lot of cool stuff happened this week.
I will say the best teams are doing a great job separating themselves this year. Last year, it felt like I didn't really know who the best teams were, and this year, they're doing a good job not losing games they shouldn't lose.
Fair. Yeah, so they're better than the bad teams.
Like there aren't a ton of upsets. Like as a viewer, just as a pure viewer, I'm always disappointed. But at the same time, I'm like, well, I guess they're ranked appropriately.
Yeah, no, I think we've done a good job ranking. I also think that there's about 7, 8, 9 teams that I'm like, all of these teams are capable of winning the national championship.
100%.
And so, yes, they are separating themselves, but at the same time, there are teams that I'm like, well, they're better than you probably think.
Yeah, I mean, on the opposite side, I've got 5 or 6. I'm like, I still don't know if you're good or not.
Right, exactly. No, I'm completely with you. Wait till we talk about the ACC.
Right. Yes.
But every week, right?
Yeah.
But the games to recap, there's 5 games from this week that were really, important. And actually, Ohio State, Nebraska was not important until it became important when it
wasn't supposed to be important.
Exactly. You just talked about teams that beat teams that weren't supposed to. Yeah. This is a game where you're a little bit more nervous.
Yeah, this one was just weird. Like Ohio State just looked like they didn't care.
Sicko game. Yeah, it was gross.
It was
so gross.
Zero enthusiasm. A random targeting at the end of the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
Which they did nothing. I was watching the game and Raiola missed at least 2 wide open touchdown passes, which was shocking with how he started the year.
Yeah, I mean, he's still young.
Yeah, I mean,
it is what it is. But at the same time, like I was expecting the 20-point win out of Ohio State against Nebraska, and we just did not see that. And it kind of is interesting because if you look at some of the other games, we didn't put up there actually the Oregon-Illinois game because it was such a blowout. It wasn't that important, and we're going to talk about it in a little bit.
Yeah.
But the Oregon-Illinois game, Oregon is actually separating themselves against these bad teams.
Yeah,
and Ohio State is not.
No.
And we expect Ohio State me, you, and Cam put Ohio State as our number one. Actually, I think you were number 2, but either number 1 or number 2 ranked team, which means they won the Big Ten.
Yeah.
So they're going to have
Ohio
to
State's
beat
my number 2.
Okay. We had them at number 1. I had them at number 1.
Yeah.
But they're going to have to beat Oregon to get that placing.
Right.
And it's looking more bleak every single game that they play. So,
which is weird because they lost to Oregon by 1 on bad clock management at the end.
Right.
Obviously, there was the full 59.5 minutes leading up to that. But
that game was crazy in general.
They should have won that game, though.
Mm-hmm.
They were in field goal range. We've talked about that, though. So it's weird seeing the difference in how they're handling other teams.
But it's also, is it an emotional thing? Because they got a bye week between this game and Oregon, so it couldn't be. I can't say like, oh, it's an emotional thing, like they had a lull because of that. Like they had an extra week to prepare.
No, I
just looked bad.
Yeah, they just looked flat too. Like I said, it wasn't even bad for me. It was just a lack of desire to win by 40.
Right. After that game, we have Texas Vandy. That game was really fun game, close. I thought it was a good game.
I thought it would be close.
It was more one-sided though. Texas looked better the whole game for the most part, in my opinion. But I don't know that the score reflects exactly how that game went. I think there was a 14-point game, on like ability wise. I thought they looked better. But allowing Vandy to stay in the game is not always is not a good thing. Like allowing them to be a part of a big game like that is not good. Like you want to kind of kick them
Yeah.
while they're down and just keep the gas pedal going and stuff
Well,
like that.
especially coming off the tough game against them, this felt like a game where you really wanted Texas to bounce back and show that they are still the top 5 Texas team.
Right.
Win by a good 20, 30 points. And I mean, we know Vandy beat Bama.
Yeah,
but
Vandy's
they've
good.
also lost to Georgia State. Again, one of those teams, I have no idea how good they actually are. We're
Right.
just going to keep watching them and be enjoying it every time.
So I'm looking at the percentages. Even when Vandy was up 7-0, Texas had a 78% chance of winning that game.
Yeah,
So-
I was looking at game control on ESPN, and I wish they did it for each game.
Right.
But I don't see one on here.
Yeah.
Texas is still ranked high in game control. I think 6th in the country.
Yeah,
so
they're one
they
of the
control
best.
games. And
Yeah. The good O line, good D line.
they controlled this game, like you were saying. It was more of there always felt like a tinge of hope for Vandy, but it never felt like they were really on the verge of making that breakaway.
Well, I mean, Texas was up in the 4th by 7, and then both kicked a field goal. Texas kicked a field goal. Vandy scored a touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Texas second half kind of looked flat, but they were still constantly in control of this game. I never thought that Vandy actually had a chance until at the end when I'm like, well, this game is a lot closer based on score than it should be.
Yep.
Notre Dame, Navy. Navy finally got to play somebody good, and as you can tell, they could not keep up. Army will get that opportunity in a couple weeks, but Notre Dame is, looking really good. I think you actually put it on the sheet. Their chance of making the playoffs.
I have them on there in 2 places.
Okay.
The Roundup.
Yeah.
Right now, their current playoff percentage.
It's almost 80%. I want to say is why I was going to look at it because
no, it's dropped. It's at 58.6.
58.6. Okay. So yeah, they're going to make the playoffs, and as long as they get out of the Army game, in our opinion, like they don't really have another game that they're going to have to play.
USC is not what they were supposed to be.
Right.
So.
Right. And then you look at this game too. It's like Navy, kind of gave the hand of the American a little bit. So we kind of should expect Army to also be in this. I think Army's better than Navy, but I don't know that it's 30 points better, 37 points better. So
I don't foresee it being anything less than a 2-score game.
Yeah.
Minimum.
And then Texas A&M, LSU, we watched this game together. Dustin is a A&M fan.
Yes.
Does not have his A&M cup today, which is surprising. I can't believe that. He did order a new jersey though.
Yes.
For Marcel Reed.
Had to get the Reed jersey. The A&M cup was being washed because it was used for the weekend. So
correct.
It'll be back for next Monday.
Gotcha. But yeah, A&M looked really good. They kind of just controlled this game after halftime when Marcel Reed did come in. The situation at quarterback there is interesting, but as you can tell, they don't really care. They're good enough to play without a quarterback. And I don't mean this in a way like, yeah, of course they had a quarterback on the field. Marcel Reed came in and he was amazing. 21 points out of him, I believe, or 28 was it?
It would
28
have been
unanswered points.
Unanswered.
I
don't know. How many was it?
I believe
I know the second half was 31-6, and that's pretty much what you need to know about how that went.
Yeah.
Partially because of some LSU flaws, partially because Marcel Reed came in and decided to be able to run without being tackled.
He only threw 2 passes in the game, two for 70. You had to respect him basically after he was running everywhere. He did, I believe, have 2 touchdowns on the ground. Le'Veon Moss, he had 3 touchdowns on the ground.
Yeah.
Le'Veon Moss had 2 touchdowns on the ground. It was just A&M was kind of, after they figured out that all LSU was going to be able to do was stop them in the passing game, they were like, well, we're going to run the ball and we're going to run it really well. And Connor Wegman had to come out because he was 6 for 18. He had a 12.98 QBR. Like, it was just not good.
Yeah.
So
did you have a chance to see Marcel Reed's QBR?
99.8. Yes. But I mean,
turns out when you throw 2 passes and run really well, you're getting an almost perfect score.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they were in man after that most of the game trying to stop this running game. I mean, they just couldn't do it. The offensive line for A&M looked very SEC-esque and just kicked the crap out of the LSU Tigers.
Which is a shocker compared to last year and the year before's offensive line.
Fair enough.
Also, A&M for the whole game, 8 completions.
Yeah.
8.
Nice.
That's all it took.
Love that.
Noah Thomas, our best receiver, 1 catch for 54. That was on that Marcel Reed deep throw, basically saying, hey, I will keep running on you, but also I can do this.
They had to throw it to make sure that they were going to keep,
Yep.
Not necessarily just pack the box with 9 guys.
Right.
Next up, though, Boise State, UNLV. That game was awesome.
That was a fun one.
It's an awesome game. UNLV came out and looked like they were going to win that game. I was like, okay, they are here to play. We can always talk about Ashton Genty. He's really good, but he also had almost 35 rushing attempts. I think he had like 4 yards per carry, which is his season average is 10.
Right.
And they held him to basically nothing, which is really, really good. Their inside linebacker, number 7. Oh my gosh, I have to go find him. The Running Rebels have a stud at linebacker, and he was just matching Genty the whole game. It was just a really fun game to watch.
He finished with 3.9 yards a carry.
Yeah.
1 touchdown.
Yep. And he never broke away. He never had that big run.
Long was 16. We're used to those 70-yarders out of him.
Yeah. Was going to say the quarterback for UNLV also looked really good. Malik Williams. Yeah, he looked awesome.
He's so fun to watch. I wish we got more years of him in college, but
yeah, he went to Campbell.
Just a fun story. Taking over for Sluka. We talked about that, several weeks ago when we had the whole controversy going on. But he's absolutely stepped up.
Yeah, he's a stud. He's very capable as a player, passer or runner. Ricky White's really good. We talked about him before.
Yes, wide receiver for UNLV. He is an absolute athletic freak as well.
Yes, the linebacker that I was talking about, his name is Jackson Woodard. Dude is a stud. He's a senior this year out of Little Rock, Arkansas. Just another guy. He has 4 interceptions on the year, playing linebacker, 3 sacks. He's very good. He's a guy that could be rising up boards if he decides to come out. Kind of reminds me of Scooby Wright. So that I don't know if you remember Scooby Wright from Arizona, but the first speed flex I ever saw was on Scooby Wright's head.
One of the best names out there.
Yeah, absolutely. But let's get on to it. Week 9 up on the board again if you want to check it out, and then let's go to week 10. So as you can see, some teams have moved. We're going to do our rapid fire, and we'll talk about each of these teams and why they've moved or why they haven't moved, of course. I'll let you go first, though.
Yeah, I mean, Oregon, obviously number 1. We talked about, we kind of already gave a preface to this, but they're dominating teams that they're supposed to dominate and more. Another big win over Illinois, who looked like they would be a decent contender. We had them showing their playoff chances low, but there, and now they're basically zero. Oregon is just continuing to look dominant. Their next game is going to be at Michigan, who has been very underwhelming, probably the most underwhelming team in the country besides Florida State.
I want to add that the spread right now is minus 14.5 to the Ducks, and I think that is just too low. How is it 20.5 to Illinois or something like that to 14.5 to the Ducks? To Michigan.
It's got to solely be because this one's in Ann Arbor.
I don't care.
It's because
I don't care.
Michigan's stadium is fantastic.
Fair, absolutely.
I don't think it matters. I think Oregon wins by 30.
Yeah.
But because I don't think Michigan, I don't even know who they're going to start at QB. They've got 3 different guys they've started now, and they switched back.
None of them are any good. So
I think they're going back to the first one, Davis Warren.
Oh, Davis Warren.
I think he's starting. Is what I saw.
Good luck.
I just don't get what they're even going for, but yeah. Oregon, big game against Michigan this week. Don't see it mattering.
Yeah, and then next 3 and 4, we have a game of the week. We'll talk about them in a second, but it is going to be Penn State, I believe, at home against the Ohio State Buckeyes.
Yes, Penn State's hosting.
We have to talk about Drew Aller had a small injury. I'm not sure. Drew Aller. I always get his name all messed up, but he has a small injury. I'm not sure if they have figured out what's going to happen. I don't think he will play, but I don't know if it's going to affect him in any way. So we will have to keep thinking about that before this game comes up. But yeah,
availability reports. What day do they start doing it? Wednesday?
It says game time call is what we've got here.
I know at least in the SEC, they do an availability report in the middle of the week, and then they update it daily. I don't know when Big Ten or if they even do that.
Yeah, his was a left knee injury too, so it's not like it's a serious situation, and he has a lot of aspirations to play at the NFL level, so this could be very interesting. Yeah. Next up, you have the Miami Hurricanes, hurting my feelings.
In so many ways.
Yeah. Game of the week though, for one of the game of the weeks for the ACC, Duke is going to be traveling to Miami to play, and they are plus 20 underdogs, but it is a big game, and we don't think Miami's very good. So maybe Duke's not good either, but they did bring SMU to a last second type of game.
Well, they should have won that game. They had a blocked field goal.
Yeah, we'll talk about it when we get to SMU, but Duke will be playing Miami. And then Texas, we did our recap of Vandy. They're on bye this week, but they did do something weird. I'm not sure why this happened, but Miami jumped them to go to number 5. Texas fell. I want to talk to you about this because I think it's kind of interesting. Miami plays a 1-6 Florida State team.
Yeah.
And beats them by 22.
Yeah.
So they move up a spot.
Correct.
Texas beats Vandy, who is a top 25 team.
No, they were ranked.
Yeah, like
probably
I don't,
should still be, but that's another story.
Well, yeah, but I don't get this. And I know we talk crap about the people that get to vote because we have 2 number 11s if y'all look at the board. That doesn't make sense either. But like, why is Texas like here and not at 5? Like, it doesn't make sense to me. If they were at 5 last week, they should be at 5 this week, no matter what the score was in those 2 games.
I mean, for anyone who doesn't know how the AP happens, they get 30, 40 voters. They take them all. And
60,
then they
62.
Is it 62? Oh, I didn't know.
62.
That many nowadays?
Yeah.
Jeez. Well, basically they assign, it's a points ranking system. You get X amount of points for the team that gets ranked first, X amount for second, blah, blah, blah. For instance, Oregon is sitting at 1,549 points. Georgia's at 1,467. Texas is at 1,276 and Miami's at 1,283. They're not exactly, it's one of those, someone could have just not liked a couple plays for the game or did like Miami's couple plays and decided, I'm going to flip it this time.
Great knowledge.
And that was enough to switch them. You only need 5 people to do that.
For sure. Good knowledge there, Dustin. I appreciate it.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those, I still continue to tell people who ask me my opinion on it. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't.
It's fun for conversation's sake, but again,
it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense.
No, I don't know what the points were last week either. So, I mean, if they were close again, it takes 3-4 people switching to
for sure. Notre Dame, we recapped with Navy. They are on bye this week, I believe. And then BYU, big win. +2.
Notre Dame's on bye?
Am I wrong on that? I know BYU and
I think you're right.
I know BYU and is on bye. So
yeah, they need a bye because they need a break before their huge matchup against Florida State.
Perfect. Exactly. That's what I was thinking.
Got to really prepare for that one.
Big win though for BYU against UCF. They were actually 2-point dogs, and I did not understand it. I fought for them all weekend, and no one cared. They are currently going to be on bye. Also, they did beat UCF by 15 points.
Yes, yes, they did.
And then Texas A&M, we did our recap about LSU. But next up, we do have them at South Carolina, and we need to figure out who's going to start for them because Connor Wegman was the starter, and then Marcel Reed came in. We've seen Marcel Reed start this year. We've seen Connor Wegman start this year. I think it's going to be Marcel Reed.
I think so too.
I think it makes the most sense.
I think it's solely because of South Carolina's defense, who we have praised all year.
Their D-line is awesome.
Who is it's
Cal Kennard?
Yes, Cal Kennard and Dylan Stewart. I couldn't remember Kennard's first name. Yeah, they're amazing. I think Reed just gives them the ability to essentially get out of the pocket as needed and not get completely swamped. Wigman's big issue this year has been he gets pressured and he misses throws.
Yep.
Reed allows them that ability to get out of that.
So it's actually a lot more than just the 2 that we just named. Of course, we have Kyle Kennard and Dylan Stewart have been amazing for sure, but there's a lot more defensive linemen that are really good on the team. Tonka Hemingway, TJ Sanders. I'm sorry, I'm going through the list because there's just so many. Then in the back end, I didn't even let me add, of course, to that list, Nick Imanowari, who is going to be one of the top safeties in the draft class. Just they have a ton of guys that are really good, and I think Marcel Reed, like you said, makes a lot of sense. Imanowari has 49 tackles and 4 interceptions on the year already. So it's just getting a guy that can move is definitely important for this game.
Yep.
And then let's see. Clemson and Iowa State are both at 11. Now, I think this is important. If they are both at 11 and a non-Power 5 team gets the 12 spot, who is in? Who's in? Because truly, neither you can't I'm of course this is week 10, but it doesn't matter. But why would you rank them the same when it's literally the playoff spot that is getting the last spot is the one that's being imported here?
Good news is the people voting in the playoffs are completely separate from the people voting on this poll.
It's fucking crazy though.
And also it's one of those situations where I think the voters right now are taking the cop out of BYU or Iowa State are going to knock each other out more than likely. And then Miami versus Clemson could potentially knock one or the other around
For sure.
and change it. It is shocking, you being a math guy, that you can have 62 voters and the numbers somehow work out perfectly where they're tied.
And then also, but like I'm saying, there's now you have the situation where because Boise State
at
is
the one spot you really don't want them to tie.
The only place you don't want them to tie because all the 10 teams before them are in. Boise State's in, and then one of these two teams is in. What? How do you pick when they're even?
That'll be a
doesn't
fun
make
one
any
for
sense.
the playoff voters to decide.
Yeah, for sure.
The conference championships will kind of figure out a lot of that.
I know
stuff.
it's just annoying to look at,
but it is very strange.
Indiana looking great without their starting quarterback Curtis Rourke. He is most likely going to play this week, is what I've heard. I would actually sit him and let him play against Michigan in the next week. I think they're good enough to beat Michigan State without him, but I do understand you want your best players on the field no matter what. So hopefully he'll do well. They're still at 13. I don't really understand why they didn't move up because they did well this last week against Washington.
I mean, I would put Indiana above Iowa State personally.
Agreed.
I'd probably have them at 12 and Clemson at 11, and then the top 10 I'm fine with.
Sure. Next is Alabama. They dominated Missouri, who had their QB2 in, still has a playoff shot. They're actually pretty high on the playoff percentage, which is just so weird to me. I don't get it.
They're sitting at 53.2% now, according to ESPN's FPI.
Don't understand that one bit, but fine. They're a 2-loss team already. They shouldn't already have that high of a stake in it, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, 52.3. It hasn't changed. Yeah.
Boise State, we just talked about it. They beat UNLV. They're going to be the non-power 5 team as long as they continue going. They will probably
they should be.
Right. They will probably play UNLV again though in the championship game. Yes. So that's important to note because UNLV did look so good. LSU, Alabama up next, but both of Alabama and LSU are on bye after losing to Texas A&M this last week. So that's an important game for LSU and Bama because winner will get an opportunity to make the playoffs.
Right.
Like we just talked about with Bama.
That'll be on the 9th where they face each other.
Right. And then Kansas State almost loses to Kansas and drops a spot because of it.
Deserved.
Yeah, I agree. Agreed.
But their next game's at Houston.
They'll win that game.
They should win by a lot.
Houston did win this week, I believe.
Yeah, they beat Utah.
Yeah. So shoot.
The Cam Rising-less Utah, but still.
Right. Donovan Smith isn't a terrible quarterback either. So let's just give a little bit of credit to what Houston could be if they had more players. This next conversation though, Pittsburgh, game of the week at I think they're at SMU. Yes. Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to make sure it's not written here correctly. Then -7.5 to SMU. Big time spread in my opinion, and I think this is going to be an awesome game.
Yeah.
Winner of this game keeps hopes alive after SMU almost lost to Duke.
Yeah, this is an elimination game.
Yeah.
For all intents and purposes, the loser probably ends up with like a 10% chance, and that's assuming a few of the teams above again lose to teams they shouldn't.
Alabama would have to lose to somebody bad.
One of BYU and Iowa State probably needs to lose before they lose to each other.
Right, exactly.
So yeah, there's going to be a lot of weirdness like that, but I'm excited for this game solely so when I said earlier, there's a few teams I really don't know how good they are. This is an example of two teams where I don't know.
Fair enough.
SMU has one loss, and it's to BYU, who's undefeated at number 9, but then they should have lost to Duke 2 nights ago. Pitt is undefeated, but has played absolutely nobody. So
Eli Holstein's been really good, but yes, as you said, they haven't played anybody.
Yeah.
Next, we basically have everybody else on bye.
Yeah. Washington, the top 25.
Yeah. Washington State moves into the top 25. They're a 1-loss team, and then Colorado moves in. They're a 2-loss team. I actually thought that 5 teams were going to fall out of the top 25, including Illinois and Missouri, but they somehow hold on.
Missouri has no business being in the top 25.
No, absolutely not.
Illinois probably shouldn't be either, but if Illinois and Missouri and Vandy probably deserves to have one of those spots.
They got beat by 29.
Well, against Oregon.
Does not matter. You get beat by 29 and you're already a 2-loss.
I agree. Okay. Like I said, I still would prefer Vandy still being there with a 3-point loss to the now number 6 team.
Absolutely.
I'm not one of the voters for a reason, I guess.
Next up, though, we have the game of the weeks. We did change it a little bit. We put it on this screen. It's easier to get through and talk about. You can see the important games rather than us going through them one by one.
You make such good graphics.
I think I do too, man. I appreciate that.
Always.
you know, looking at these groups, we've already talked about a lot of these teams, but very important game. Ohio State going to Penn State -4.5 in Pennsylvania. I think that that's an interesting line because I think that
it's at 3.5 as of this conversation.
is it okay? Well, I can't change it now.
Yeah, it's -3.5 now, but it's probably going to jump between 3.5 and 5.
It started at 3.5.
Yep.
Moved to 4.5 and has moved back. Okay, yeah, that's okay. Good to know.
My guess is there was good news about Drew Ayler somewhere, and so it's starting to move back towards Penn State.
Yeah, he's the most important player on that team. If you do want to like talk about just prospects in general, both of these teams are littered with them.
Oh yeah.
Offensively for Penn State, you look at Drew Ayler, like we talked about. Then you also have both running backs, Katron Allen and Nick Singleton, both guys that could, both of those two guys could do well. Tyler Warren, the tight end, had the highest receiving yards by a tight end all year in a single game already this year.
A game he played center in.
One time, he caught the ball from there.
Caught a touchdown on the play.
Julian Fleming is unfortunately not good at football, and it's really sad. He was a 5-star that has just kind of fallen from graces, and so it does all the time. On defense, they have multiple guys. There's you've got Abdul Carter is their main edge rusher right now. He moved from inside linebacker down to edge, which is a very cool thing to do. They've got all kinds of players. Let me go grab because I have there's a safety from there that I can't think. Kevin Winston Jr., who is an absolute stud. And then on the other side of the ball, there's a ton. Yep. So it's just littered with talent. It's a big game. Going to be a fun game. Game of the week for sure.
Yeah. Who are you thinking? I'm going Ohio State on this one.
Ohio State. Yeah.
I'm not talking spreads, just purely pick them.
Ohio State.
I'm going to go Iowa State on this one.
Ohio State?
Ohio State.
Yeah. I'm going Ohio State for sure. And then the next game, where are you going? Miami or Duke?
I was going to say, which direction? Are we going left, right, or north, south? Who's winning?
Yeah.
I mean, as much as it pains me to say it, I'm taking Miami.
Okay.
To win. Now, the fan inside of me is going to have a very different feeling on Saturday.
Yes, absolutely. I'm taking Miami, but I hope that Duke can find a way. Absolutely.
This is the revenge game, isn't it?
Yeah.
Manny Diaz's revenge game?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did forget it was his revenge game.
I'm telling you.
So that's going to be a lot of fun.
It's very interesting. Offensively, Miami's very good. Defensively, they are not as good. And so let's see if we can get Duke to exploit them. Basically,
I mean, they absolutely shut down powerhouse Florida State, though. So
yeah, they did.
That was a defensive performance.
Okay.
Their best play was that QB sneak I was telling you about the other night.
Played 3 different freaking quarterbacks. Yeah. Jesus, we're awful.
But again, you got a 40-yard QB sneak. Who else can say that?
By a freshman.
Who else can say that?
Yeah, that was pretty crazy. And then Iowa State to Texas Tech. I actually think that's a really close game, and I want to take the Red Raiders.
Well, we're talking about this one more later.
Yeah,
it's one of our prediction ones later. But yeah, I think so. Again, teams of I really don't know if they're good. Iowa State.
Yeah, for sure. Texas Tech's going to test them. They have really good offense. Their quarterback is pretty good. They can chunk it around. They can't play defense, but they're just a Big 12 team that obviously that makes sense, right? Like
Tech
they go together.
Has somehow not changed their play style in 20 years. They can put up 50 and give up 60 in the same game, and it's every game every year follows that.
I would love to be a Tech fan. Like I wish I could be a Tech fan. They're 5-3. It's not like they're bad. And then you get to like watch intense football all the time.
And throw tortillas. And
all kinds of things that happen in Lubbock that we don't talk about on the show.
No.
And then the next game is my favorite game on the week. The Pittsburgh Panthers going up against the SMU Mustangs. I think that this game is super interesting. If I had to take a pick, I'm definitely siding with SMU. They are one of the more explosive teams in football. And like you said, they have so many transfers. They've gelled at this point. Yeah. I think they're good.
That's one thing we talked about earlier in the year was they had no cohesion coming together.
Yeah.
A lot of teams are doing that now with the transfer portal and everything. Again, that's actually one of the few things that isn't a downfall. I think it's fun. It creates these moments where a team like SMU can now come back. It helps they have millionaire donors who may have fronted the cash for it all, but it's legal now instead of like in the 80s. So I mean, it's fun, honestly. I've enjoyed watching SMU be good again.
They are very good, and I'm excited to see them win this game.
I do agree. SMU takes it.
Cool. Let's jump over. Let me get on the other board real quick. We have a few more games to go through, and we're going to start with last week's picks. Dustin did hit on his short pick for the Nittany Lions. They won 28-13 against the Wisconsin Badgers, basically without having to throw the ball. So that was a really solid look.
I'm all for games where you win and not throw the ball.
Oh, are you? I bet you are.
They had found respect for it.
21 points in the second half really helped them propel, but it was a pretty straightforward game.
Well, they were down at halftime too. That was another one of a team not handling business like they should have.
Well, that's kind of the MO, I feel like, for Penn State for the most part.
Well, that's the big kind of what James Franklin downfall.
Yeah, for sure.
That
he's the reason they can't win natties and conference championships. And I will die on that hill. If someone wants to disagree, fine, but that's why.
You've mentioned it in multiple episodes, so I don't think anyone's going to argue on it
Bring
anymore.
It on. Next up, we're going to talk about this one because I was fighting for BYU, and we agreed on this game. We absolutely agreed on this game. I'm not going to say that I didn't think Virginia should have covered this.
Yeah.
But I wanted the BYU Cougars to be on the freaking bet slip.
I was afraid. Again, they were afraid. Before last week, they were still on my list of I don't know if they're that good, especially with UCF should have beat Iowa State.
Right.
They messed that up too. BYU has proven they're good. They're off my I'm not sure yet list anymore. Well, Virginia, for whatever reason, just decided not to show up against North Carolina.
Yeah, 24-6 at halftime, just getting butt whooped. And then I don't know if you saw that play, but basically a defensive lineman picked the ball up and went 84. It was cool. It was fine.
North Carolina, same team that gave up 70 to James Madison. They gave up 14 to Virginia, which says more about Virginia than North Carolina.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And then the next game, because I want to make sure it's on here so I can, I'm going to get a lot of flack in a minute. So you get a little bit of flack for this because I know where I'm going to get really shafted.
I will gladly take the small amount of flack I'm going to get for this for the conversation that's coming up. So go for it. Okay. Enjoy your moment.
Here's my moment.
Get some dopamine.
Yeah.
I'm going to drink some waters to prepare myself.
Oh, yeah. You're going to need a wet your whistle. Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. This game, BYU's good. Okay. I'll go on. I'll be done.
I mean, it's fun. We gave him a segment last week. It was deserved. We're going to keep talking about him every week because we're fans of the team as far as.
And we love what is going BYU. On.
BYU deserves all the credit.
Yeah, love him. So I don't even know his real name because it doesn't matter. It's BYU. No, I'm just kidding. Let's laugh. I know his name. I'm just kidding. But let's get on to my super dog. Disappointment in so many ways.
So close.
Watching this game on your couch. We score in the fourth quarter. I'm like, Coach, go for two. Go for two. Give me some love.
Why not?
Give me. I need this. I need this. The best bad beat of the week would have been them going for two and getting it because the line was 21.5. This ended at 22 points.
Miami bettors would have been not happy.
I would have loved every second.
I bet you would have.
Because I could have said Florida State did something good for me this year. Yeah. Oh my God.
Your undefeated streak did finally end.
I was I believe I was 5-0 and this is now 5-1. And it hurts because it was my own team.
It's so close.
So much disappointment in my life, man. But yeah, so we'll get on to it though. Here is what is next. This is our roundup. We did a big segment last week. Not much has changed. We did want to talk about some of the teams though that did win games. LSU dropping to 21% after losing to Texas A&M. A&M jumping to 46.6. I don't remember what they were last week.
I've got that pulled up. They were at 33%.
33. So yeah. So basically LSU and A&M flipped. And then LSU dropped even more than that.
It is overall amazing to me that A&M is still below Tennessee and Alabama.
Alabama one doesn't make any sense.
Especially how much they're down to Tennessee when we don't play each other in the regular season.
Right,
it's
exactly.
Very strange. I'm not sure what the metric they use for FPI is. But I've heard other people, mainly with the Alabama being their key evidence of how are they 14th in the AP.
Yeah.
And 52% still.
Well, my other thing is Texas actually is the number one team overall on the power rankings right now, the power ranking index, which they just won by 3 against a team that they probably should have beat by 20.
Right.
So I don't really get it either. Looking at the ACC, this is all going to change. This is the game. This is the week it would all change because SMU is going to play against Pitt this week, and then I think Miami might get stifled this week by the Duke Blue Devils. Clemson coming back off bye. Clemson's good. They're going to win.
They'll be fine. Yeah.
Yeah. The Big Ten.
Oh, I did want to bring up Clemson. Did you see how much their playoff odds dropped?
No, I
They
didn't.
went from 41.5 last week to this 32. They dropped 9%. My only assumption is the simulator has to give those to SMU and Pitt.
Either that
because
or
they both won.
Either that or they're saying SEC teams are better than bad ACC teams.
I guess so.
Because that could be it too.
I mean, Pitt went up 8%. Clemson dropped 9.1. So I think that's got to be because those numbers have to add up.
Yeah. Fair enough.
No, they don't. I don't know how they do it.
I don't know either because I would actually expect Texas A&M to have gotten some of it, Alabama, Tennessee, because I don't think that these teams, even Indiana winning, maybe they expect Indiana to lose sooner or later because Indiana's just good. Talking about the Big Ten, you can see all four of these teams have a chance, and all four of them actually have a legit chance to win the conference title. I don't actually think these numbers are correct because I think Ohio State's better than Penn State and Indiana, and they both have to play them in the next couple weeks.
Yeah.
But at the same time, these aren't ridiculous numbers.
No.
Like, these are all very reasonable numbers, in my opinion. All four of these teams are getting into the playoffs. That's how I look at it. All four are getting in.
Well, I mean, I don't actually think – well, I do. I do think all four get in.
You didn't put it on your prediction, though. I don't think you had Indiana.
I had all four of them.
Did you have Indiana? Okay. Yeah. Cam didn't have Indiana.
Yeah.
That's right.
I'm 99% sure I had Indiana. I think Indiana's good enough to get in.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember if we're going to be updating those anyways.
Yeah, they're changing, believe me.
Yeah, especially now after this win with their QB out, I'm much higher on Indiana than I was.
They're good.
Yeah,
they're very
good.
The Big 12, Iowa State, BYU, Kansas State, just sitting in there. BYU has the best chance of winning in getting into the playoffs, and that has a lot to do with the fact that Kansas State and Iowa State play at the end of the year against each other.
Yep.
As you can see, Kansas State actually still has a 24.6% chance of winning, even though they almost lost to Kansas. It has to do with the fact that they could make, if they beat Iowa State at the end of the year, they make the Big 12 championship,
right?
So they could win it. Yeah,
presumably BYU.
Yeah, because BYU does have such an awful schedule. Yeah. Looking at this right here, the non-power 4 teams that we have to talk about, Notre Dame will get in 58.6. No. Boise State will probably get in, but I know we took UNLV off of here. If UNLV wins the Mountain West, they are still, in my personal opinion, the next best team. I don't think even a 2-loss UNLV team.
Yeah, I feel like they have to be the next.
Well, Army. Army's the other.
It comes down to Army.
Army, because Army is going to lose to Notre Dame.
That's what people are. Well, they're waiting on that, and then also what happens in the Army Navy.
Right.
Game at the end of the year,
which will
not the one on the 14th. That'll be after the playoffs have been picked. The first one. Yeah,
exactly. So this is an interesting just set of teams. Navy's out. I don't care what that says. Memphis is a 1-loss team. I don't think they're in, but 2.5%. That's okay, cool.
Had to keep them in. They also barely beat Charlotte. They're not going to make it, but there is a weird way they can win the conference, and Boise State and UNLV again shoot each other in the foot.
Yeah, if UNLV loses another game and then somehow beats Boise State, kind of thing.
Assuming they still make the championship at that point.
Right.
Again, that's really the only way is they
2.5%
knock each other out.
It's a whole 2.5% basically.
There's a reason that 2.5 is accurate.
Yeah, exactly. Next up, though, we're going to talk about our biggest winners and our biggest losers. Our biggest losers, there's 2 of them and no winners. That's awesome. Love that.
Yeah.
The first loser is going to be the LSU kicking game. And I'm going to let you go ahead and talk about it. I'll find it down here.
Go ahead. So we'll just start with that. There's the obvious of missing 2 field goals. And I believe it was like 46 or 48. I can't remember the exact yardage it was.
Yeah.
He missed that. He came up for the second, which was within a yard of the same distance. And I turned to you and I was like, he's going to do it again, isn't he?
Pushed it.
And then immediately pushes it. And then the third rendition of the LSU kicking woes was the holder staring at the kicker as the ball hits him in the face. Shoulder, looks back, rolls his eyes at the camera.
That's amazing.
No idea how that worked out. And then obviously getting recovered and going back to A&M, and was really the kicking game was the big turning point.
A lot of momentum issues.
Right. Marcel Reed coming in just immediately exploded that. But yeah, the LSU's kicking game has to be the biggest loser for the amount of memes I've already seen of it.
Really, I have not even been paying attention to memes for that like
Well,
game.
I
But
mean,
you are a
I
Texas.
see a lot of the Aggie ones.
Yeah, I was just saying you're a Texas A&M fan, so you
Right.
probably get them more.
It's less so the Aggie victory memes and more so the LSU holder rolling his eye meme.
I believe that because that was hilarious. We
Yeah.
both started making fun of it as it happened.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
Luckily, I'm not on any memes quite yet because I get to talk about this whole situation. And I want you to give me a little blast. You get 30 seconds. Ready to go.
Well, first of all, I said last week, once this game happens, this exact one happens, it's going to be 30 minutes. We could spend a whole episode. We won't. Maybe I'll make a cap cut about it because I
You
know
get
how to
30
use that
seconds.
now. No, I'm going. That's fine. Yeah, Liberty, they're off our sheet. Emory's finally accepted defeat. That Liberty is not making the playoffs. Emory was so high on them. I about had an aneurysm.
I wasn't high on them. Well, let's not say that. Let's not spit like falsities.
But for real though, what happened here? Caden Salter's a good quarterback. Liberty was supposed to dominate the conference. Kennesaw State is known for being the arguably worst, maybe second worst compared to Kent State in the country, team wise. And then they go in, storm the field twice because the first play there happened to be 1 second left. So they now have more field stormings than wins on the season.
It's amazing.
And they beat the team that's theoretically supposed to beat them by 50 every year for the next 2 years.
I think they had a 20. I think it was a 30-point game or something when we talked about it.
It was a huge. You should be able to pull it up there actually if you scroll down on the left. It should be right there.
27 and a half. Yeah, and I was like, "There's no way."
And that attendance. So for reference, A&M had 108,000 in the stadium. Yeah. Theirs was
8,000. Oh my God! They all stormed the field though.
But
they had
16,000
storming the field more than A&M did.
That's very true.
All right, let me give my spiel because obviously last week we talked about it and I said that if Boise State wins out and the Liberty Flames win out, Boise State's in. Right. Like there's certain things that I was trying to make a point of. So I gave you these scenarios over text the other day. I said, Scenario 1, Army goes undefeated, Navy's good, Notre Dame's good. They're in, right?
Are we
over Boise State?
Oh, okay. As compared to Boise State, I think with the win over Notre Dame, you have to put Army in over Boise State, assuming Notre Dame doesn't drop like 4 more games.
Perfect.
Somehow.
Agreed. Now the next scenario is Navy sucks, Notre Dame's good. Are they in? Same knowledge, right?
We're saying Army's still undefeated.
So Army's undefeated. Navy sucks. Say Navy won 7 games.
Yeah, because I mean, at that point, the Notre Dame being a top 10 team is much more important to me than the Navy not being good.
Right.
That's just expected.
So Navy sucks. Notre Dame sucks. What happens then? And they're undefeated. They're still 13-0.
Assuming all else the same, Boise State's still number 1 in their own, or not number 1. Sorry, the one loss, and it's to Oregon by 3 points. Everything else the same. I'm probably putting in Boise State because Army has not done anything to say they are a better team, in my opinion, than Boise State, who barely lost to a team that's blowing out everyone else.
Exactly. So that was my kind of argument was the fact that if you have an undefeated team, they should get at least a chance to play as long as there's not another Power 4 team, a non-Power 4 team that is really just blowing everybody out the water.
But even with these scenarios you presented, my point is still the same as it was when we talked about actual Liberty being a team. Was their strength of schedule is so bad, you cannot give them a top 12 spot just because
they're not a top undefeated. But that's the thing. They're not a top 12 team. They're just the best non-Power 4 team.
Yeah,
so they could be they could be ranked 20th, and they still get in.
For this instance, Liberty, say they win out and whatnot, and Boise State loses, and UNLV wins the conference.
UNLV is still in because they're still a 1-loss team.
That would be they have 2 losses.
Oh, they have 2 losses.
Yeah,
sorry, you're correct.
But they beat Boise State. I would. And
you'd still put UNLV in with 2 losses.
We'll say Liberty went undefeated this year, for instance. Okay. They didn't somehow.
So 13-0. 13-0.
I would easily take UNLV with the 2 losses over an undefeated Liberty who played literally no one.
So this is where I argue because I think we need to talk about the fact that like there are teams that go undefeated and deserve an opportunity because they have done that. Now, I know what I'm not actually talking about Liberty. Liberty is in one of the worst conferences in football.
Well, I mean, right. That's what I was saying is last week you presented Liberty. That's why I was so animated that please stop.
And we talked about it as like, I think I was talking about it as a whole.
Right.
Not so much just Liberty themselves.
Right.
And we got, of course, to talk about Liberty themselves because they were just happened to be in the situation.
Right.
But if there is a situation that occurs with a much better, like non-Mountain West non-Power 5.
Well, I think your good example was Army here.
It's an
Army's in a
American.
much worse conference than Boise State.
Right.
But we're now potentially going to have we're not. Army's not going to beat Notre Dame. But if they did win out, we do have a very weird conversation of one lost Boise State versus undefeated Army who took down Notre Dame.
Right.
And it could still happen.
And it could still happen. And the question is more so, who are you putting in?
Between those two?
Yeah. You're going to take
I told
Army
you,
because of the
gave
Notre
the
Dame
situation. If they're going to beat Notre Dame, and
even knowing Boise State's only loss is 3 points to the number 1 team in the nation.
Army has no losses and over a team that's perennially top 10.
Big questions. That's what I was trying to get at last week with this whole thing, is because like I think there are situations where we need to talk about teams that are much lower in conference ability compared to others that are going to make it.
100%.
When you have undefeated teams, you have to talk about them. They have to be they have done something that no one else has done.
You have to at least mention it.
Yeah.
But you want to hear this one? Your argument about Liberty flamed out.
Wow. Can't wait for that. Okay. Well, that's a good time to end the show. No, we have one more thing first, actually. We have to do our super dogs because I have to get back on pace.
Yeah.
Because I can't.
Your winning ways then.
Yeah, exactly. Let me show y'all what. Hopefully it works. Is it working? Oh, I think y'all see it. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going with the Duke Blue Devils. They are going to. It's a 20-point game here, guys. Like last week was 21.5 to Florida State, who's 1-6. Now you get a freaking 6-2 team.
Yeah.
I'm taking Duke to be better than 20 points.
Right. I was about to say, you're not. Are you taking Duke money line? Or
that would be crazy.
Okay.
No.
So to cover the spread.
To cover the spread.
Okay.
Duke plays close games, and I'm going to make all the same points as I made last week. Okay. They played at SMU, close game.
Yep.
Should have beat them. Got a kick blocked at the end of the game. Close game, 7-point game against Florida State. Beat them. 10-point game here. They have a good defense. Yep. They have solid defense. They have a lackluster offense, but 20 points. I'm still on that train that Miami's not that good, and they play close games. Yeah, they beat the crap out of a 1-6 Florida State team. Who cares?
They also gave up a 40-yard QB sneak.
Hell yeah, they did. Louisville, close game. Cal, close game. Vatech, close game. I'm gonna ride with the Duke Blue Devils again.
Well, you know my opinion on it because in our pre-show conversation, I found out that Emory had sniped my super dog pick, which was Duke.
He sets up. Hold on, you set up the sheet and didn't put your super dog, and then I put them in there, and you didn't want to go check.
I may have sniped myself on that one.
Yeah, I don't hear it. I don't hear it. But Dustin's super dog is up next. I want to hear about this.
Yeah, I'm going with the Red Raiders. I think you mentioned earlier you were considering that they could possibly win this game. I don't know if I'd go that far, but Iowa State is still on my question mark list.
Right.
I think they're going to win more than likely. It wouldn't shock me if Tech did pull off an upset because again, they can drop 50 any random game.
28, 44, 30, 35, 34. Yeah, I mean, they sit above 30 every game. So
yeah, they're doing quite well. So, and then like I said, Iowa State, I just don't have any trust in them. Not yet. Now, if they win this game, they win it handily, then they're in my BYU category of, okay, they proved it. They've continued to prove it.
Well, and I kind of understand where you're coming from. I will say, the Baylor, you can compare here. Baylor got beat 43-21 by Iowa State and then 59-35 win against Texas Tech. But if you look at the games, they haven't played anybody that's actually got a winning schedule in a really long time. I actually think Arkansas State has a winning schedule.
Well,
but they are not in a Big 12.
Iowa State's big win is Iowa, and they should have lost that game.
Yeah,
Iowa completely fumbled that game.
Fell apart. Yeah, they absolutely fell apart. Yeah. Cade McNamara also.
Yeah,
Cade McNamara actually sucks.
McNamara?
Oh my gosh,
is that what we're going for?
Thank you.
Okay, no worries. No worries.
But yeah, he cannot. He can't do it. Their offensive coordinators can't do it. Caleb Johnson is the only good spot on that offense.
Nope.
And yeah, I think Iowa State obviously won the game because they just had enough to score. They could score enough. That's all. They didn't have to do anything really. You score 20 points against Iowa, you're going to win the game.
Yeah, so. Give me the Red Raiders and their tortillas.
Yeah, exactly. Let me stop sharing. We appreciate y'all hanging out with us. That was our recap for week 9 and are looking forward to week 10. A lot of fun stuff going on. We're going to have recaps on our hot takes coming up soon. We have a lot of those. Some worked, some did not. We have 3 good hot takes right now going.
Mine are looking fantastic.
I have 1 bad hot take, okay, and it was biased. It's fine. But yeah, so we appreciate y'all hanging out with us, and hopefully y'all check out our next video.
Yep. Thank y'all very much for joining us today. We'll see you next week.